go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Anything presented by Moser Consulting. I'm your host, Angel Leon, Moser's Director of Personnel. We're glad that you're with us for this episode of Ask Anything because today we're going to be discussing cloud computing, its benefits, its challenges, and the expense of it all, and beyond with three of our own, Kirk Becknell, Ron Dalton, and Jason Shive. Today, we're exploring one of the most important and sometimes misunderstood areas of modern technology, cloud computing. It's the invisible backbone powering everything from the apps on our phones to the systems that run global enterprises. The cloud has transformed how we store, process, and protect data, bringing huge benefits in speed, scalability, and innovation. But along with those advantages come some tough challenges, from managing security risks and compliance to keeping costs under control as cloud usage grows. To help us unpack it all, I'm joined by three incredible experts who each bring a unique perspective on the cloud, from strategy and operations to cost management and innovation. Together, we'll dive into the benefits, the challenges, and yes, the expense of it all in cloud technology. Let's get started. Welcome to our guests, Ron Dalton, Jason Shive, and Kirk Becknell. Gentlemen, how are you?
You're doing great.
Well, it's great to have you with us. This is, I think, a first, or maybe not a first for us, because we've had a trio of participants in the past, but I think a trio in cloud. So that's actually kind of nice. And Ron even joked that we kind of look like the Brady Bunch with all these blue backgrounds. So let's start by setting the stage. Cloud computing has become such a broad term. It means different things to different people depending on their industry or role. How do you each define cloud computing today, and how has that definition changed over time?
Whenever somebody asks me what cloud computing is, I always use the analogy, it's just a computer in somebody else's closet, right? So Angel comes to me and says, hey, I got all these photos on my camera and I don't have anywhere to store them. And I tell him, well, hey, I've got a computer at my house that just has a bunch of storage and I'll give you some of that for, maybe a couple bucks a month, chip in, buy me a coffee or something. And I'll let you store your photos there. Essentially, that is cloud computing. He's using resources that I manage and maintain. He's abstracted from having to do any of the typical day-to-day maintenance and such of the storage that runs it, and all he knows is his pictures are safe and secure.
Yeah, I think I could add, maybe an analogy there. You could think of it as a shift from owning a car to using Uber. You get transportation when you need it without worrying about the maintenance, parking, or upfront costs.
Great way to frame it, honestly. I think both of those ways to frame it are actually pretty good. Kirk, do you have anything else to add?
I kind of wrote down some notes, and what I had thought was it's somebody else's data center that's going to house your data, and it can be how big or how small you want it, depending on your situation. So say you've outgrown or don't want to have a footprint on site anymore to store your servers and storage and everything, you can pay somebody to host it for you. That's where the benefit comes in. If it's kind of grown beyond what you envisioned or outgrown your space or whatever, or there's other things to consider, power requirements, different things. The cloud makes a lot of sense. You just kind of need to step back and see, is it a good fit for you and what you want to do going forward with it? Because it's not a one size fits all solution. It's sort of a individual thing. So it makes more sense for some people that's got a big footprint versus somebody who's got like 2 or 3 servers that it makes sense to put them in the closet in their building or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Each situation might pose a different benefit or something good for that specific user case.
Yeah, that's again, that's 3 different ways to put this and really frame it, because cloud has evolved from being just a simple hosting concept to something much more integrated, like what Kirk was saying. Maybe you can have something up in the cloud and still keep something on premise, and that could still be a good strategy. But let's talk a little bit about that next level of impact. So when companies make the move to the cloud, the first thing they usually often talk about is flexibility and speed. But there's so many other benefits that come with cloud computing. From your experience, what are the biggest advantages organizations are seeing when they migrate to the cloud?
I think the things that I've seen, it's like agility, scalability, and maybe access to technology that they wouldn't easily have on premise. You get the agility, like, oh, I need a dev environment for this application real fast. All right, cool. Go to Azure, AWS, GCP, spin up a virtual machine. There it is. Whereas on premise, I I may have to find capacity somewhere. At best, I would have to find capacity somewhere and then get access and do all that stuff. Worst case scenario, you would have to buy additional infrastructure and then rack it, stack it, set it up and all that stuff. Whereas I can build a virtual machine in 15 minutes, put something on it. Maybe within an hour, I've done all my smoke testing for my applications. You have a lot of that flexibility, and then the scalability, multi-region. If your customer base is all over the United States or even all over the world, you can deploy the same virtual machine in different regions and put something like Azure Front Door in front of it so that users from one part of the country or one part of the world gets access to the right region. So everybody's getting the same type of functionality out of your web app. And then it's just access to new technology that you may not be able to get on site. If you're a smaller company and you want to do something like virtual desktops, for example, it's kind of a big investment if you host that, locally in your office, but it's a few clicks on a web portal for AWS and Azure, and then you have desktops ready to go.
Add on to what Jason said, a lot of the cloud providers have specific, say, application stacks that you can use, that you can leverage to build an app that's not necessarily tied to one technology like a server or a database. It just kind of has everything linked together. So it's really easy to build something like that with what they have to offer. You can spin up something in a matter of minutes that's pretty robust as far as what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the cloud really is a complete, business platform for small and medium businesses. They now have access to advanced AI capabilities, sophisticated analytics, enterprise grade security. These were once only available for Fortune 500 companies or enterprises. Now small to medium business kind of levels the playing field. That if you're a 50-person company, you can now deploy the same technology stack as a multinational corporation.
That definitely sounds like an advantage for smaller to medium-sized companies versus maybe 10, 15 years ago when all of that stuff was really just readily available to the Fortune 500s, the people that had the big bucks, if you will, to pay for that kind of security, that kind of backdoor security for everything in their company. Let's dig a little bit into some of the growing pains. What are some of the biggest challenges or pitfalls you've seen when organizations try to move to the cloud, whether that's around planning, cultural, or technical implementation?
I think some people are just afraid of it because it's new. It's new to them. It's just a totally different thought process, kind of a lot of times with what they have available. It's become a lot more widely adapted, but when it first came out, there was a lot of hesitancy to go to it because they were afraid of the security and just because it was new. But that's kind of it's kind of grown to where it touches everything we do now. I mean, a lot of the big companies use it. I think Netflix uses a cloud backbone. There's some other stuff, Amazon Prime, a lot of these big things that a lot of people use. If the cloud has an impact, it's widely felt now. So it's here. It's kind of here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. And
I mean,
either you embrace it or you're going to get left behind.
but we just saw some of that impact not too long ago where we had a huge AWS outage and it basically impacted most, if not all, the applications of our daily life, especially at work, beyond the personal side. But at work, a lot of companies were hit because they didn't know what was going on, of course. And this huge outage basically took out, I feel like, half of the world's computing of some sort.
That's definitely something that I don't think people understand. Like, everybody hears about the cloud, right? And they know it's a thing, but I don't think a lot of folks think how much of the world of technology that we work with on a daily basis is actually in the cloud, right? I don't think anybody has a real good idea until something like a Cloudflare outage hits or the AWS outage, and half the world can't do business for a day or two. Like, I don't want to say it's like the best kept secret or anything, but you really don't understand how much functions in one of these cloud providers until something like that happens. As far as some like pain points that we typically see, I think there are two things that I see a lot when I'm talking to people who are interested in moving to the cloud. It's the complexity of the migration. It will uncover gaps in your understanding of your applications when you try to move them and all of a sudden nothing works because it had some maybe underlying interconnectivity to things that you didn't know about at the time. Some workloads just don't lend itself to being cloud native. CAD applications comes to mind. That's one that we've seen people try to do a handful of times, but it usually the latency between the office, even the closest region, is oftentimes too much for that. And then there's a skill gap. Most legacy, like big iron IT people, like Kirk said, they're a little bit afraid of it, maybe because they don't have a full understanding of it. But it does require you to think a little bit differently because you're not managing physical hardware. You can't touch any of these things when something goes wrong. Like a system administrator, if a server goes down, just going over there and looking at the server sometimes helps your thought process get moving, but you don't have that ability here with the cloud. So it's just a lot of understanding, changing your ways of thinking, and then fully understanding like what your application is doing and does it really lend itself to being a cloud workload.
Yeah, and I agree there with what Jason's saying there. I mean, another way of saying it, there's this lift and shift mentality when moving to the cloud, and businesses simply just moving existing setup to the cloud without really rethinking, their infrastructure and their systems and their applications and how they work, and taking that step back to understand what you have today, we'll say on premise, versus what that looks like in the cloud with all of the advanced features and capabilities and across region and all the things mentioned prior, how they can help really streamline your not only your applications, but your workflows, your business, your services, making them more really cloud centric, moving away from that mentality of the on-prem to leveraging now cloud native functionality.
How hard can that be? Just trying to get someone or an organization to move away from that.
It can be difficult for a lot of the reasons we mentioned. If people are just averse to the cloud because it's unfamiliar or it's not something they feel like they can really control, that's difficult. A lot of the selling points, I think, when you're talking to somebody who is averse to this kind of technology is to talk with them about data gravity, for example. Like put your workloads close to where the data, as close to the data, the source of the data as possible. So if I have a website and I have people in California, Montana, Florida using it, maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for my data center to be in, I don't know, Iowa or something along those lines. But that application would probably benefit from being a multi-region web app in the cloud, right? And then you have, like we said earlier, you have the ability to get your customers and get their data into the cloud into a region that is closest to them, so they get better performance. And then, like I said, if all your data is generated by the folks in your office and you have a computer on the second floor, that maybe doesn't lend itself so much to being migrated to the cloud.
Interesting. So let's talk about something that I'm pretty sure people want to talk about, and that's the cost factor. Many companies go into cloud expecting savings, but often end up with unpredictable or rising costs. Why is that happening, and how can teams get better visibility into what they're actually spending?
I think there's a few reasons this happens. I think when people initially go to the cloud, they probably over provision because they think that everybody in their company needs a supercomputer, or that every server is a supercomputer, and that's just what it takes to run that. And then you get that bill for a giant instance that has maybe 5% utilization over a month. And that's a little bit scary. A lot of folks who are developers or maybe just infrastructure administrators don't think about it too much because there's this idea that it's somebody else's credit card, right? Finance is paying for it. They just see that I have a virtual machine that runs all the time. That's cool. Then finance comes at you like, why is this running 24 hours a day when 7 days a week when we only work, 6 to 3, 4 days a week, things like that. There's a lot of complexity with some of these things, and the cost can creep on you. Just building a virtual machine sounds easy. You're just paying for the virtual machine, but you need a network to house it. You probably want to back it up. That's an additional cost. Probably need some storage for that machine to work. That's an additional cost that's outside of the virtual machine. So it takes somebody who really understands like all of the bits and pieces and what it takes to run just a single virtual machine or a simple application in the cloud to help understand and get a grip on what that pricing can eventually look like, and to not be surprised. But also, since this is utilization based, when I buy a server, I know what that server costs. I know what it costs me for my IT staff to support it. So I have a really good idea every month that this is going to cost the same amount of money. For the most part, I don't necessarily have that unless I get really, really strict and really, really specific on my cost analysis and cost alerting. If I have a big month, then that resource is going to cost a lot more than if I have a slow month. So it's a little bit more difficult to plan, and I think that gets a lot of people.
all the major providers do have like a cost analyzer tool that you can, if you know it well enough, you can get good reports. You can set up alarms to where if your costs are going to go over what you're expecting, you'll get an alert to say that your bill is going to be more than your allocated alarm threshold. So like say you're expecting your bill to be $100 a month and it goes up to 105 or something. When it first hits over that 100, you'll get an email saying you have a spend alert on your account. Another thing is to just be cautious when you're out there provisioning resources because they do cost money. So if you over provision, that's going to cost more money. Just like if you want a new car, you're not going to go out to buy a Ferrari to scoot around town in, just because it's going to be way overboard what you need to spend. You'll get something that's going to work for you, but you don't want to spend too much money. Then the other thing is sometimes if you plan ahead enough, you can reserve an instance for a lot cheaper than if you need it like right there on the spot. So there's a way you can sort of guess what you might need in advance and sort of reserve it. And I think you get a discount when you do that. There's also, I think, I'm not sure of the exact term, but I think it's capacity on demand. So if your workload goes up and down, you can have the resources grow and adapt to that workload. So you're not specifically buying a server that's going to work 100% all the time. You might have 100% for maybe 3 hours of the day, and the rest of the day you can either have it not work at all. You can turn it on and off. We've done that with some customers to where it reduces the cost a lot by just they need the server for 4 hours a day. So you turn it off the rest of the day and they don't get charged for it, and it saves them a lot of money. So there's ways to get around the cost and sort of leverage it, but you just have to keep an eye on it.
I think kind of what we're describing is sort of a new terminology that has come to bear with cloud called cloud sprawl, right? It's easy to create resources in these cloud environments. Example, employee comes in and they create a test environment for a project. They forget to shut it down. Well, now you're paying $500 a month, let's say, that for something that no one's using. In traditional on-prem IT, there was, you could say, friction, right? You had to submit a purchase order, you had to wait for approval, you'd wait for delivery, and that friction, sort of helped prevent waste in terms of not having resources running that were not needed.
I guess to kind of give some positive spin to the cost of cloud, because it's not all bad, right? You do have a ton of different options available to you to monitor that. It just takes a different mindset. Because like we said, when you're on-prem, it doesn't matter. A machine runs, it costs what it costs. You're paying a little bit of electricity bill every month for that, but it's already calculated. With a cloud solution, you have tons of ways to alert yourself or set up reports or monitoring to say, hey, this is my budget for this particular resource or this particular resource group. If it gets to 80%, send me an email. If it gets to 90%, shut it down. There are things you can do like that. It makes it a little bit easier if you're a large enterprise and you have different divisions or different business units within the enterprise and you want to tag and charge back those units a little bit more easily. Whereas if you had let's say a multi-tenant server on-prem and you had 14 different applications from 10 different business areas, it's a little bit more difficult to make sure that you're paying for that appropriately. But with the cloud, you can easily tag things as IT, tag things as finance, and then even set up different billing accounts so that things tagged with this get charged to this person, get sent to this email for payment and stuff like that. It sounds scary, but there are tons of ways that you can go about keeping yourself alert to what's going on. But you do at first have to micromanage it a little bit just to get a handle on it.
To get that initial setup. Yeah. So how does that all, moving to the next topic, tie into security? Because security and compliance usually seems to be at the center of every cloud discussion. So how can organizations find the right balance between agility and protection, especially in high regulated industries?
I think a little bit of that comes from knowing what is available from your cloud provider. Like for example, Microsoft can give you at the click of a button FIPS compliant machines or high trust. They have different even different clouds for the different types of business that you may have to get in. And you basically can control, like you have control over just about everything outside of the actual data center. So if you want a zero trust architecture, you can do that. You get to decide that. Do you want encryption like everywhere? Everything in transit is encrypted. You can do that. Is it additional charge? Sure, but it is available. I know with Azure, and I apologize because I am more Azure knowledgeable than I am for just about anything else cloud related, but there's automatic checks you can have done, security and compliance checks. When you spin up something, it'll run a check and give you, hey, this is what you need to change because these are the settings and the policies that you've told me that all these virtual machines have. So it just runs those checks when you build things. A lot of that security is built in. It's not always easy to find, and it's not always easy to set up, but the majority of it is there. You still have to do some things manually. Maybe you have company specific policies that have to be put in place, and the cloud doesn't necessarily know about those, but all of that stuff is available. Once you spin up a virtual machine, if you need to apply STIG policies, for example, you still have the ability to do that. You're not prevented from doing that. You're not stuck with just the security that your cloud provider gives you. There's tons of different options.
Yeah, and I'll add just onto that. Most cloud providers, having those security features built in, as Jason describes there, that's cost a lot of money. To have security costs money. The cloud platforms, having it all there and baked in and, able to enable it, turn it on, what have you, just it's there waiting for you with compliance, HIPAA compliance, SOC 2, GDPR, all those things, those capabilities, they're all there. Those security features are all there.
Most of the time I've dealt with the cloud, the cloud platform itself is very secure. I think all three of the major providers, AWS, Google, and Azure, all, if you request a security statement on the platform itself, they'll come and they'll say their platform is secure and show you all the checks that they do if you really need that. And then beyond what Jason said, sometimes if you do just stand up a machine, whatever kind it is, the machine itself, sometimes you just have to secure it. There's a sort of handoff that you're responsible for some of the security and the platform does the platform security. So that can be sometimes a little different too.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to see how far we've come in that realm. So before we go, as we look forward to the future, cloud computing seems to be evolving faster than ever, especially with AI and automation now in the mix. Where do you see the biggest changes happening in the next few years?
I don't know if I see it, but I hope to see it. It's the barrier for entry, because it does take like somebody who's pretty good with IT servers and just knowing the 700 different tools that are in each cloud. If you don't know what's there, you don't know to use it. But it may be something you want to use. So what I guess I kind of see with the emergence of AI is just being able to, the average person being able to type in, hey, I have this business idea. I need to host my website. It needs to be publicly accessible to these 3 countries. And then the cloud says, all right, here's what I will spin up. You tell it yes, and it just creates your environment and tells you how to upload your application. And then you don't even necessarily need a degree in IT to be able to understand the services that you're offering. I can probably see that before I see most anything else, just with the way that AI is coming into everyday life.
Let's not give it any ideas. Come on. It's just
it already knows. It's listening to us right now, probably.
That's a reality. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't show up in the next 3 months, what Jason just talked about.
Yeah. It's definitely down a path. Copilot, for example, in Azure, it's there. I think, you could sort of in a summation, you could say cloud computing is moving from where you run your applications to how to transform your business. And as Jason stated there, simply by writing a statement and telling, AI in that case, this is my business need. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. Having it go and build that infrastructure for you is certainly very incredible where it's going.
Yeah, and the fact that it's within the realm of possibility right now, that makes it a little bit scary, but then at the same time, it makes you look at, as professionals, I imagine you guys are probably thinking, well, if it can do that, can we prove it to make sure that it's actually building the right infrastructure though?
You'd actually be surprised at some of the stuff that the AI spits out. A lot of times it's really impressive as to what it's like spot on.
something you have to look at is like AI is coming. You can't necessarily fight it, I don't think. You just want to be one of the folks who knows how to properly use it. It's like, in my personal work history, like I was a Solaris administrator, Linux came and it was pretty obvious that Solaris wasn't going to be sticking around. So made the jump to learning Linux, and then virtualization kind of took over, and it became pretty obvious that virtualization is the next big thing. So take time to learn virtualization. And now cloud computing is the same way. AI is the same way, and it's such with like robotics in factories. It's not a pleasant thing to think about because it has taken jobs, and AI will also take jobs. But if you're one of the people who knows how to manage it and how to implement it properly and get it to do the things you want to do, then just like those folks who operate the robots in the factory, you're still wildly valuable. So you just have to kind of stay ahead of it and have that kind of foresight to make sure that you're not in its way, I guess.
All right. And with that, on that somber note on AI,
Now I can put my tinfoil hat back on.
you said it, not me. Let's go ahead and thank our guests, Ron Dalton, Jason Shive, and Kirk Becknell. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on Asking Anything for the first time. Thank you so much for bringing your knowledge about cloud computing into the podcast, and we certainly appreciate it. And we hope to talk to you guys soon.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for listening in to this week's edition of Ask Anything presented by Moser Consulting. We hope you enjoyed listening to Kirk Becknell, Ron Dalton, and Jason Shive talk to us about cloud computing. Be sure to join us next time as we dive in deeper with our resident experts on what they're currently working on. Remember to share your ideas or topics with us through our social media. In the meantime, please give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, so long, everybody.